Hey, my name is Joe Latender. Welcome to my channel. So that's how you do that. Planning for a vinyl plank installation is key to having an easier installation. Also, to avoid those bulky, ugly transitions in the doorways, which you do not need, and any small pieces that might be in an area that you're going to always see. Now, it doesn't matter what your layout is or what skill level you are. The methods that I'm going to share with you in here can be used by anybody who's just started for the first time today, or you've been installing for many years. Many of us are not going to have just a one-room installation. We're going to have multiple rooms that we're going to need to install in, and that's what this video is going to be based off of. You can see this is an installation that I worked on that has multiple rooms. I did not use any transitions. I avoided small, ugly pieces in areas that everyone would see, and it turned out stunning. Whenever I start a vinyl plank installation, I never just start with a full piece at a wall and then just go ahead and continue with the install and hope that everything goes well. I put some planning into it because there's some things that I want to avoid, like small pieces that would be in an area that would make it a real eyesore. I also want to avoid transitions that are bulky, ugly, trip hazards. It looks so much nicer when you go through a doorway and you have a seamless transition. The other thing I want to take into consideration is I want this installation to be as easy as possible. Well, going through doorways can be very difficult, which is why I like to put some planning inside my layout. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. If you came through a doorway and you had to wrap plank around both sides of the wall, it makes it a lot more difficult to do this on getting through these doorways. Like, for example, imagine coming through this door right here, where you'd have to wrap around both sides of these door jambs. Could you imagine trying to put this piece in right here? This would be a very difficult piece, and this is what I'm trying to avoid. So what I like to do is I plan accordingly, and I plan for my plank, the long joint, to land in these doorways. Then I can easily hook on a scrap piece to the plank in the doorway, and then hook on my next row to that scrap piece, extending it from wall to wall, getting this plank perfectly straight. Then I use my cheater board, marking these walls and these door jambs easily onto this plank. I'll take that plank, I'll cut it, and then I'll come back in and be able to easily install this, moving on into another room very easily. So to start the layout process, what I do is I put some plank together. Usually about 10 plank is a good amount to put together. And then I'm going to find the center point of this room. Once I find the center point, then what I want to do is figure out how large of a piece I'm going to have on the end. Now imagine if I put plank together from that mark, extended it all the way to the wall, we'd be able to see on our last piece how large of a piece that would be. And instead of putting the plank together, I'm just using the 10 plank to figure out what that would be. And as you can see here, it's going to be about 3 inches. So I would have a 3-inch piece on both sides of the room if I base the layout off of the center of the room. I can move this if needed. Now let's go back to the drawing so we can really drive this home. Now I measured from wall to wall. It was 158 inches. I found the center point, which is 158 divided by 2. I make a mark on the floor, and if I connected plank from that mark all the way to the wall, we'd see that we'd have a 3-inch piece. Now the next thing that I want to concentrate on from here are these doorways, because we want this plank to land in the doorways. So let's go down and do some measuring away from these first 2 doors that are on the same wall as the wall we just based our layout off of. Now based off that mark, I can figure out exactly where the plank is going to end. Now I want you to keep in mind that these doorways are 4.5 inches wide, and so you have some room to adjust this plank back and forth in those doorways and still be able to land the long joint in them. So I put this plank down in the doorway exactly where it would end, and now I want to measure to this wall to see exactly how large of a piece that we're going to have. So I measured to the wall, and now I'm going to go to my 10 plank, and I can use that mark that I made earlier at the 79 inches and just line my tape measure up on that, so I can do some quick measuring here to see exactly how large of a piece I would have. So I mark on the plank where the wall ends, and now I can measure at the beginning of that plank to that measurement to see exactly how large of a piece we had. Now again, if I lined up a bunch of plank from that mark put it together, I'd be able to see that I was going to have a 4 3/4 inch piece at that wall. Now the next door we want to check to see is this doorway. We know we already hit the other two. Let's see how this one works out. So again, I make that 3-inch mark away from the wall, just down farther at the corner, so I can measure into this doorway to see where the plank would end. Now I measure my plank, and of course I don't get to that measurement. That's why I extend my tape measure again. You can see here when I measured the first 10 plank, it was 58 5/8. I stick the 58 5/8 on there at the end, and then I measure to see where the plank is going to end, and that was 82 inches. Now again, if I connected plank from that mark, I could see then exactly where the plank ends, but instead I just like to use my tape measure, and you can see right there is where my plank would end. And if it did end there, the plank would have to wrap around both sides of that door. I don't like that. I want it to end inside the doorway to make it easier to go into that next room without having to wrap around both sides of the jamb. So what we need to do is we need to move this over at least an inch to get it into the doorway. And like I told you, because those doorways are 4.5 inches, we have room to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to move this line over an inch. And this is going to be my new mark that I'm going to go off of for my main line. Now I can just transfer that mark down to the other side of the room by measuring from the mark to the outside wall and from the outside wall in, and then I'll make another mark at the same exact measurement. Now because I'm by myself, I'm going to use a nail to stick it right in the middle of my mark. Now I'm going to take the end of my chalk line, stick it on there so I can stretch this out and snap my line. Now you might have noticed that I moved this chalk line over from where the original mark was on the floor, and the reason why I did this is because the fireplace was in the way. I couldn't extend the line all the way to the back wall. I also wanted to get that line a little closer to my starting wall so I didn't have to measure as far away. Now I just figured that 4 plank was enough for me, so I just measured over from the original mark 4 plank, and that's how I figured out where to move that chalk line to. Now you can move your chalk line around as much as you want, just make sure you always move it a certain amount of plank. Now vinyl plank has a tongue and a groove. This is the tongue side, here's the groove side, right here. Here's the groove side on the butt joint, tongue side, tongue side. We always want to face the tongue towards our starting wall. We always want to work away from the groove. So I'm going to be working away from the groove this way and this way. So that means I want to start this first plank towards that wall with the tongue facing that way, and then down here at the end with the tongue facing the wall down there. Working away from the groove is what we consider working forward. Working away from the tongue is what we consider working backwards, something that we want to try to avoid. And in the very beginning, when I decided plank direction on this layout, then I decided, okay, where would I start to avoid working backwards the least amount? And I chose in the living room in that far corner. Now, as I work my way through this, you'll see that I will have to work backwards in this back entry and in the kitchen. It's unavoidable. Now, I do want you to know that working backwards isn't difficult. It's just different than working forward. It takes a little bit of getting used to, and once you get the hang of it, it should go pretty smooth. Now, places like this cubby hole and the closet in this bedroom, well, those are going to be unavoidable to work backwards into, so don't worry if you do have a little bit. You'll be able to handle this. It just takes a little time. Now, most people's layout are going to be different than what I shared here, and if you're looking for some extra help on your layout, you can come and check out Plank Bootcamp, where I will walk you through in my Plank Bootcamp guide, step by step on how to figure out where to start, plank direction, and your layout, and everything else that you're going to need for your plank installation. Also, I offer a support bundle that you can sign up for where you can get some one-on-one help from me to help you with those things. I'm also going to share a link below in the description of this video on my tools page where you can come and see the tools that I recommend and that I use for my plank installations, some of them which I've designed myself. I'll also include a link that's going to bring you to my website where you can see what I consider the best plank out there on the market today. I get asked a lot about what's my favorite vinyl plank. Well, this is it. If you're looking for a good, high quality vinyl plank, check out the link below. I hope that helped. If you have any questions, let me know. Now let's continue on with our journey on this plank installation. Now I'm going to show you in my next video how to install those first few rows to get started real easily, and it doesn't matter what skill level you are. I think that you're really going to like this method that I'm going to share with you. It's pretty much fail-proof, and it makes the install go so much easier when you start the way I'm going to share with you. So I'll see you in the next video, and be sure to check out all the videos in this series of my plank boot camp. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.